Welcome back to the Changemaker podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, my guest is Gabe McGuire, who is one of my best new friends, awesome guy. Gabe is an 18-year-old political leader from the rural town of Mercersburg, Pennsylvania, a current freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. He serves as the president of the Young Forwardists Committee, the Forward Party's youth wing. Under Gabe's inaugural leadership, the Young Forwardists developed 33 high school and college chapters in their first 2 months. And so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome my friend Gabe.
Welcome to the Changemaker podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Okay, glad to have you, man.
Thank you. It's truly an honor to be here.
Well, so it's interesting because we're trying to raise awareness about the Young Forwardists, but tell people a little bit about the Forward Party, because so many people, it's just like, particularly during an election year, it's like this crazy freaking presidential race is sucking all the air out of the room. But tell them about the Forward Party and then a little bit about the Young Forwardists as well.
Yep. So you cast the political environment pretty well. And the Forward Party's job is to come in here and re-norm partisanship. So we are bottom up, not top down, which is often a different way at reimagining politics, prioritizing local initiatives, local measures over that of the national, as by solving the things that impact us day to day on a local community, we're then better equipped for things that are overarching. As a party as well, we don't have the same approach to policy. So we'll often see like national overarching policy by the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, but we are a values-based party, which is really, really impactful because it shifts the way that we treat partisanship by prioritizing things like free people, vibrant democracy, and thriving communities. And so under that umbrella of values, if we find a candidate that upholds them, that represents them, and wants to make a positive change in their community, all they have to do is uphold those values, and we can put them forward as a candidate. As for policies, we let them be crafted on the local level as they are needed by some local communities. You wouldn't want the same policy here in Mercersburg, Pennsylvania, that you might want out in Anchorage, Alaska. And so by having the diversity built into the system that allows for flexibility in the way that we approach controversial hot topic issues in our community, we're then better equipped to solve these national difficult issues.
So I want you to get into the Young Forwardists too, but so for our viewers and listeners, this was started 2 years ago by Andrew Yang, who had been a Democrat presidential candidate, but Christine Todd Whitman, the former Republican governor of New Jersey, is part of the leadership. So this is, as I say, so many people, I mention it to them and they don't know that the Forward Party exists. But this year, the number of candidates that are being endorsed is so encouraging to me. And one of the things that I love about the Forward Party is it's not asking anybody to declare fealty to one political ideology. The Forward is endorsing Democrats, Republicans. There are also Forwardists, but it's the two-party system. As they become more and more extremes and being controlled by the extremes on either side, they're so rigid. And it's basically saying, well, if you don't adhere to this, and you're not part of the team. But It's just, that's what I love about the Forward is it's really bringing people together from all parties.
Yeah, no, that's very well put. And the work that we're doing here has the potential to make a national reckoning for the way that we approach partisanship. But it's not a reckoning in a bad way, but rather that of something that's constructive and that will rebuild the fundamental systems necessary to revive positive politics.
Well, and the thing that I love too is that, basically the founding principles, as you said, build from the bottom up. One of the things that I love is, focus on integrity in your leadership, treat people with dignity and respect. So to find candidates that will adhere to those principles, I grew up and there were people in both parties who were statesmen who I could sort of model my political life after, but you just don't find that anymore. And so my wife, so we just ran the Augusta Stronger Together campaign here, to get a ballot referendum passed. So it was positive, inclusive, uplifting, brought people together on common ground. It passed with 74% of the vote. But my wife is like, you've got to tell people that being positive works. I'm like, but it is now, it is so baked in to the two-party system that, okay, we need to demonize the other side. And so I'm like, man, I can't believe people haven't beaten a path to our door saying, how'd you do that in this political climate? But you realize it's so, the mentality is so ingrained that I'm another mayor that's a friend of mine said, they can't fathom what you're doing. But for you guys, I'm like the Young Forwardists, and I want you to talk about that. What I love working with you guys is you're not jaded and you don't believe it always has to be this way with a toxic polarization situation created by the two-party system.
Yeah. No, I mean, you put it very well, but imagine from the perspective of an 18-year-old like me who's just gotten their first ability to vote. And we've grown up in such an environment that only facilitates negative politics, bickering, inflammatory rhetoric, really anything to get yourself ahead of the other person, as opposed to mutual and collaborative success. And so the Young Forwardists see the light at the end of the tunnel and want to empower youth to be that change. So I'd be happy to introduce the Young Forwardists too, if you're willing.
Yeah, and I'll say I thought about this, and then I want to get into the Young Forest. I'm like, what I did through that campaign, we did, was focused on educating and informing, not inflaming and enraging. And so I think shifting the paradigm, I think it's much more successful in what you guys are promoting, educating and informing, than inflaming and enraging. And it's a whole hell of a lot healthier than what we've got now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really is. And I mean, hopefully we'll see the success very soon.
I know you will, because I know what you guys are promoting. And for our viewers and listeners, these people that, I've been interacting with Young Forest, they're super energetic, super intelligent, super positive, super civic minded, and want to be involved in politics. But correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have no interest in becoming a part of the two-party system, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, the last thing we want to be is a copycat. We've seen the same thing applied over and over and over, whether that's in the parties or in the Young Democrats, Young Republicans. But our team of Jazz, Chris, Norris, Solomon, Bryce, and Alex really just want to reinvent the system. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it's rather crafting a new system by being the change makers ourselves. And that's the other thing we want to do as the Young Forwardists.
Well, and I've shared, your story with all of my teenage nieces and nephews. And you and I have had discussions. When you think about it, a lot of the founding fathers were in their 20s. My dad fought in World War II and flew B-17 bombers as an 18-year-old. So I'm like, this idea that, teenagers, sit at the children's table, history, it has so many examples throughout of teenagers who have actually made a huge difference in our world. And I'm like, I think this is so cool because Ford was already established. You guys were kind of in your infancy, but the Young Forwardists were formed by 5 teenagers in their bedrooms across the nation. Yeah. I'm like, what a cool story.
Exactly. Hey, Deke, you're looking at the birthplace right here. All the movements, all the calls have been made right in here. So it truly is a movement started from our bedrooms.
But I think I'd communicated with you guys over the weekend that just watching the Olympics, and another example, you're like, so many of these athletes that are on the world stage, and they're not overwhelmed by being on the world stage. They're rising to the moment, but a lot of them are teenagers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I did some research after I sent you that message, and I found that there's an 11-year-old, an 11-month-old, 11 years and 11 months, who just participated in the Olympics in skateboarding. And in that same tournament, there was a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old. So it's really shocking at the power of what youth can bring or what youth can do. And so our goal as Young Forwardists is to bring that to the political environment where it's really needed the most.
I totally agree. And I tell people, I'm like, okay, the Beatles were all under 30 when they broke up.
Yeah.
And look at the impact a bunch of 20-year-olds, 20-year-olds, their music is still having on the world. So I mean, this idea that leadership comes with an age requirement, I
Mm.
just don't buy that at all. And I mean,
Yep.
my goal is to empower, uplift, engage, and and put you guys in decision making positions faster, sort of expedite the process because you guys just don't have these biases that are grained in. I'm 56 years old. I can't believe after being in politics as long as I've been that I'm not jaded, but I continue to cross paths with guys like you, and I'm like, man, look at these guys. They're going to change the world.
Hey, you're young. I would like to say that. You're younger than my dad, so hey, I mean that's young in our view.
Well, but I think your story is so fascinating. So you mentioned your dad, but so you went to a prep school in Mercersburg, right?
Hmm.
Where your parents, I think you were born in Pennsylvania, but your parents were both school teachers and moved there to teach so that you and I believe you have a brother as well
Yep. Yeah.
could go to get access to this great education. I mean, what a sacrifice, what a great American story that
Mhm.
is.
Yeah. No, and it really took me until my senior year to realize the grandeur of what we see as a sacrifice. But really, it's been the most transformational 4 years of my life here at Mercersburg Academy. And I owe the school a lot. And I think part of it actually is the environment. I live in the same town that I go to this boarding school at. And so the school is almost a liberal bubble in some sense in a very, very, very conservative area. So either walking to school, like on my way to school, or just in the surrounding area, I've seen boats upturned, like dormant on somebody's front lawn, spray painted with the words like Trump won. There are flags hanging from banisters that say like FJB or F Joe Biden. And we've even seen Confederate flags in town. And so, in this really interesting juxtaposition of a liberal bubble, liberal education within a very conservative area, it's almost birthed a sense of political understanding and a desire to see more room for collaboration and cooperation in what could be such a friendly, open community.
Well, and so I love, the contrast and the juxtaposition and a liberal educational bubble
Mm.
in the midst of a really MAGA conservative city. But you also, and I love this too, but your mayor is a Democrat.
Mm. Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that too. I shared a meeting with him 2 hours ago at this point, and we talked about just the local state of elections and his plans. But it goes to show that look, this is somebody positive who waters and brings flowers for our town on his free time. He runs a chiropractor in town, and you can find him anytime with his dog. He's such a positive, uplifting figure in the community that really like there's no reason to hate him. You learn to put politics aside and prioritize character.
Well, and so one of the things that so really building bridges and building community and finding common ground, it's it's harder than it is just to be inflammatory, find difference in everything, but it's much more sustainable
Mm.
and it contributes to the health of a community that much more. But I tell the story when I was first elected, I'm like, why do people that don't know me hate me?
Hmm.
But it's these assumptions. Well, he's a typical politician. But I think, I mean, it was never about politics to me. It was about leadership. But I think you also can't fake sincerity.
Yep.
And your mayor is obviously a sincere guy. And I'm like, that's to me, it's about public service. But I think if we're really going to see substantial change in the nation, it's going to have to come from the grassroots up, as
Mm.
you made mention, because, people ask me, why didn't you run for governor? And I'm like, well, I'm happily independent, as we've discussed. All local races here are nonpartisan. But I said, if I had, to get elected, you would have to choose a party more than likely because you got to raise a lot of money. And if
Mm.
you pick one of the legacy parties and you have to toe a party line, you're not your own person anymore. And so
No.
I think that's what I like about Forward is it offers you the freedom to speak your own mind and to have your own thoughts. And as you say, one size does not fit all. What works in Augusta, Georgia might not work in San Francisco or Austin, Texas,
Mm.
but
Of course.
that flexibility is key.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really empowering too for the candidate to have them on display and not the party line on display. And so as Young Forwardists, we want to uphold the same sense of grassroots priority, but also the sense of empowerment for youth to be the agents of change that their communities need.
Well, I am here to help you out because I guarantee you can do it. But it's I'm also a movement partner with Starts With Us,
Mm.
and so we did a study 2 years ago that showed that 87 or 84% of the American electorate, something 80 something percent, is basically sick of hyper-polarizing politics.
Hmm.
So what you're promoting doing, I've done over 4 elections over 20 years here. It's giving those people that feel disenfranchised, giving them a voice. And
Mm.
I mean, it was so great to see our community in this campaign rise up. I mean, 74%, but we respected that everybody in our community is different, and that's okay. But combined, we make a community, and everybody brings strengths to it. But it's not just seeking to demonize somebody and saying, well, they're
Yep.
from the Latino community or they're from the
Hmm.
poor area of town. I'm like, that is just this divide and conquer at the local, state, and national level. I mean, but it sometimes is, I mean, bothersome to me that here locally, you know, we had, when I first ran, the Democratic Party I was 37 years old. Democratic Party was supporting one candidate, the Republicans another.
Hmm.
And so they didn't see me coming and I flew right below the radar screen, which, take note, we're going to do a lot of that in going forward. But
Yeah.
I thought so we were in a really bad political position, but I'm like, okay, so, but neither Democrats, the local Democrat Party, Republican Party, everybody would complain about how bad off we were politically. But I'm like, but you're a part of this and you're not taking any responsibility whatsoever.
Hmm.
And that's at the national level. It's like, oh, I heard that the former president said that Kamala Harris is evil, but it's
Yep.
both sides demonize and want to say that all our problems are due to that side or the other side. I'm like, it's a combination. And I mean, and I'd love to get your take on this, but I'm like, in your lifetime, I'm not sure if this has happened, but in my lifetime, there have been lots of occasions where Republicans and Democrats controlled both houses of Congress. It happened under Donald Trump
Mm.
and the presidency, and they didn't make any more progress than
Mm.
if it's divided government.
Yeah. No, I mean, first of all, to comment on something you said earlier, you said you were 37. Now, that could swing as a young Fordist. That is quite
Yeah, well,
young.
no, my sensibilities have always been younger. So,
Yeah.
I was telling somebody, we talked about if it was the Avengers, I'd be Tony Stark to your Peter
Yep.
Parker, or you said I'd be, Professor X to the X-Men. I'm like, or
Uh-huh.
maybe I'm like Peter Pan and you guys are the Lost Boys. I don't know, but any
Yeah.
one of them is good with me.
Yeah. No, and it's honestly an honor to have you on our team. But to answer your point earlier, like we want candidates, we want representatives who are so hungry for change that there is like nothing that they wouldn't do to encourage a new wave of reforms. And regardless of what side that is, as long as it upholds the forward party values of community first, bottom up, not top down, we just want people to see some more action and fluidity in politics as opposed to the jaggering stalemate that we often find
Yeah.
ourselves stuck in. But once we are stuck in that, there's a difference between employing the forward process where we're actively looking for solution, we're actively listening to each other's voices, as opposed to going right at the other person and looking to promote your voice over anyone else, even if it's your own side.
So I was having a conversation with Scott Mackey, who you and I and Scott have applied for a panel at South by Southwest.
Yep,
I knock on wood. I pray for that every day because I think that would be so cool.
it
But
would.
I was telling Scott about, so for 20 years, I've done this on the ground. I've showed that all the theories that are being developed in at institutions of higher learning, they work. But I said, but man, it's not like people are rushing to learn how to do this other than you guys. But he made a good point. He said, you know what? Problem solving is bad for business.
Mm.
And I'm like, unfortunately, that's true to a degree. I mean,
Yeah.
if political toxic polarization goes away, it puts a lot of us out of business. I would rather, I mean, this has been a life's work for me. I would love to retire and go, man, everything's good.
Yeah.
But it really, but I think most Americans are not as divided as we're portrayed to be.
Mm-mm.
So it's just, how do we get through? Because I believe that government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Yep.
And in order for that to happen, you have to give the people a voice. And when 87% are sick of toxic polarization,
Yeah.
here we go, forward party. Here
Exactly.
we go, Young Forwardists.
Yeah. No, the time is nigh, and especially in regard to college campuses, like there's a hunger like almost never before for this form of organizing empowerment. And so it's really the honor of the Young Forwardists to be here in the moment and to recognize the need and then fulfill it.
Well, I will tell you, so Scott worked, he started off working the Obama campaign, the original one, worked both campaigns.
Yep.
Went to work in Washington for like 6 years or something and got so burned out. But when I was talking to him yesterday, he was like, I think I did my best organizing work by the time I was 20. But you guys have helped re-energize him. So in our potential panel discussion, you've got 3 generations represented. If we get this done, which I sure hope we do, but it's about love, politics, and winning elections, which is crazy, and people never would associate that. But I'm like, we've got 3 generations willing to stand together and say, we agree that to fix this issue, it has to be cross-generational. And I told you the other weekend, I'm like, this is an equal partnership on this panel.
Yep.
We are all equals. I'm not the senior partner. We all have different perspectives that should be valued equally. So, and saying that this has to start at the grassroots level. I've never seen anything like that. And it came together in like less than 24 hours. But I'm like, what a powerful statement to have 3 guys of 3 different generations saying the same message together in union and in solidarity.
Of
That's
course.
badass.
It really is. Hey, I mean, Avengers, X-Men, both kind of fit that. But yeah, I mean, we're looking forward to really making a splash here. And it's more than just making a splash. Sorry. It's setting up the base motion to create a tidal wave that then goes in to reform the way that we look at politics, we approach politics, we even interact with it on a day-to-day life. I don't want an environment that's so jagged and jaded that, any other 16-year-old is walking to school and seeing flags that say FJB, or facing people with Confederate flags in their house. We want somewhere that's supportive, that's constructive, and that rather builds people up as opposed to setting them down. But of course, I mean, as an 18-year-old, I really believe in making the change and not just saying that. And so with the Young Forwardists, we're looking to empower youth to be that change, to be the ones working in politics, fighting in politics, to make sure that it's not just a stalemate that goes to benefit both sides, but rather an opportunity for new figures to step in and take the scene.
So you can fill me in a little bit more on this, and I can't remember the young lady's name, but she is running for Congress in North Carolina. She's an independent. Is it Selene or something? But she's an independent. She is the first, I believe, independent. She's a forward candidate, endorsed, but she's the first independent to make it to the November elections in North Carolina for Congress. So she's 38 years old. She's got 2 degrees from Harvard. She is also a veteran who served in the special ops, right?
Oh,
and
wow.
I'll have to Google and I will find, but so she, in the special ops, they did an experiment, put together a female special ops team. because in Afghanistan and Iraq, so the special ops guys could not talk to women. That was forbidden.
Hmm.
So she said in the interview I saw, and golly, I wish I could remember her name right off the bat, but Google independent candidate in North Carolina, and you'll find and veteran and Harvard graduate. But she said these guys did not want us there when we first got there. But I now have lifelong friends, because they saw the value. We provided a value add that they couldn't get other than women. But I'm like, that is our nation's history is innovation, pushing the envelope. But to do what you're doing takes courage. It takes a leap of faith and to challenge the status quo. But if nobody challenges the status quo, we're always going to have the status quo. And to me, the status quo is not good enough for me.
No, it really isn't. And you mentioned the statistic earlier, 87% or something around there feel dissatisfied. Then why aren't 87% of voters going out to actively make a change in the way that they approach politics? And Young Forwardists, Forward Party, want to give you that alternative, give you a chance to express your disinterest, not only through a candidate, but also through a new system of imagining partisanship that would eradicate a lot of the infighting, the bickering that we see continue this odd continuum of political discourse or faulty political discourse.
Well, but that's the thing to me is we can all have curiosity about each other. And if we can set the ground rules, okay, this is not an argument, it's not a debate, it's just a conversation. And I used to have people call me when I was in office, and I had an open door policy. I took as many phone calls as I could, but they would just start going off. And I would say, I'm like, look, I'm going to treat you with dignity and respect, but I expect the same thing from you. And if we can't agree to that, then this phone call's over. And people got, calmed down very quick. But it's like I say, it's like if you're trying to, enrage and inflame people, that's just, but to educate and inform. And, there's an old philosophical tenet that says that when two philosophers come together, they have a discussion and they try to make their point, say which one is better. Well, if one proves their point is better, the other philosopher takes that point and tries to further it himself. So we can all learn from each other. And I'm like, I'm never going to hate somebody for having a D or an R in front of their name. I'm like, we can learn from each other, but we have to be willing to sit at the table and have those conversations.
Of course. Yeah, and it's hard for a lot of people, a lot of families to have that conversation in the first place. And so by fostering that environment in a high school or a higher education setting, we really want to lay the foundations that then equip these students, equip these youth to be able to have those conversations beyond just school. And then as they grow up, join not only the workforce, but also just kind of the older generations, they're then equipped with the skills to have needed conversations that will inevitably be beneficial to our political system.
So grassroots engagement is where I live. I mean, I get my energy there, but I was actually had lunch with our mayor and we were talking about the Augusta Stronger Together campaign. And there were a lot of people that thought that it was not going to pass. And we're out there at the grassroots level. I mean, we did the work. We had a great partnership, but he would look at me and say, why do people think this isn't going to pass? So the opposition, our mayor is black. The opposition was led by like 6 black gentlemen all over the age of 60, but they held a press conference. And so people that I know, because I've spent my lifetime engaged at the grassroots level, but they thought, okay, well, there's 6 guys having a press conference. They're speaking on behalf of the entire black community. I'm like, if you're not actively engaged at the grassroots level, you don't have your finger at the pulse of what's going on in your community. So 3 of the gentlemen that were heading up the opposition were black ministers. So people saw those 3 black ministers. I'm like, but the mayor and I have discussed, they didn't see the room full of 100 black ministers that we addressed, that at the end, they were saying amen to what about my presentation. I'm like, but it's, if you lose sight and if you don't have your finger on the pulse, you're easily manipulated, which is unfortunate to me. And it's here again, well, just because there were 6 vocal people you're assuming that represents the entire part of that community. You know,
Mhm.
you can't, you've got to be doing grassroots engagement. The change
Of
is not
course.
going to come in any other way.
Yeah. No, I mean, change is one thing, but then perception is something completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, I can talk about the Young Forwardists A forever and B a little bit later if you're more curious. But one of our main pillars of our chapters are the idea of opportunity, that we want to empower youth to be active in politics. And the entire idea behind that is if you are living your life growing up in a politically toxic environment and the only kind of reality or political reality that you know is what you see on CNN, Fox News, ABC,
Yeah.
and whatnot, then your perception tends to only be that. That's all you can kind of conjure. But when we give youth opportunity to exist within the American political system, to experience it for themselves without anybody prescribing a certain belief upon them, but rather by giving them the chance to live it themselves, they rather see a different reality where they're the ones who are in control of how they approach politics. And especially something as vital as grassroots organizing, grassroots politics, they really get to see the community and the people that are at the heart of all of politics. Whether that's doing door knocking and meeting people at their own house, at the position that they're in on a hot Tuesday or Thursday, August 1st. It's really just about seeing people in real life and being able to use that to educate your decision as opposed to being prescribed to a certain view yourself. And so I mean, that's a major tenet of civic education. And again, another thing that the Young Forwardists look to empower within youth.
Well, you know, I was telling Scott yesterday, I think we're on a collision course with Matthew McConaughey, who
Yep.
happens to live in Austin. And we will, if we get our panel in, we'll invite him to it. But I saw an interview with him the other day, and he's beaten this drum for years now. He said, we need to take the microphone out of the extremist hands, and
Mm,
we need to be aggressively centrist. And
mm,
I totally agree with that because it's like, oh, you know, centrists are kind of lukewarm. They're Melba. I'm like, no, that's, and I've continued to say on the show repeatedly, I'm like, I grew up a punk rock fan, and the status quo of political polarization, that is the man at this point. So I am happy to rebel against that. So what we're doing is actually, it's not, you know, getting angry or anything, but it's about as rebellious as you can get right now.
mm. Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, it's difficult to challenge a political elite. And in this case, I mean, we're threatening a system. And so the Young Forests have gotten no as an answer so many times. And I can't even speak to the amount of times that the Forward Party has gotten no as an answer. And in situations like that, there's two things you can do. You can back down, you can put away your yard signs, or you can go back out and you can challenge them because you know you're doing this for the right reason. You know that you're doing it to empower more youth to be politically active, to get centrists active and engaged, as opposed to sitting back and refusing to vote because all they hear is the bickering from the far left, far right. It's a
Well, you
hard
know,
thing to do.
it's funny. I'm like, so I governed to the middle when I was in office.
Mm,
And so so this is a good lesson for you. So I went on a church retreat the year that I ran for office. And the facilitator said, in church politics, you've got 3% of the congregation that's for everything, very vocal, 3% that's against everything, very vocal. You've got 12% that are for but, not as vocal, 12% that are against but. So, but that adds up to 30%. And
yep.
then you've got the 70% in the middle. So, and said if you're governing as a church leader to the vocal 3% on either side, you're missing out on doing what's in the best interest of the 70% in the middle. So that's how I governed for 9 years in office. And man, I got the extremes, far left and far right, very pissed off at me at different times. But I'm like, well, hey, if you're willing to take it, I'm like, if you don't get the extremists on either side mad at you, you're really not doing it right. But I think, and I've had discussions with Lindsay, who's the CEO of the Forward Party,
Hmm.
you know, at some point we're going to become a target. But the young lady running for Congress in North Carolina, one of the things I've found fascinating, and this is where grassroots comes in. Basically, it's a safe Democratic district, but from what I understand, they're basically deploying no resources. So
Mm,
she is out there working it at the grassroots level the whole time, I'm like, if she can win, the hope that that'll provide, but that is, that's where the grassroots is a strength of ours, because so many people in those, political positions of power just assume, well, I'm going to get reelected.
Yep.
Nobody's going to challenge me. But I think we kind of have the element of surprise for sure.
Yeah, no, we totally do. And to add to that point, I mean, really, there's a lot of races that the Forward Party will get involved with that are completely uncontested. It might be a 70 to 90% Republican Democratic victory in that district, in that race. And oftentimes the other party won't even choose to step in or to run a candidate. And so, for the very few super bold candidates that are willing to step up, to throw their hat in for the principle of having a safe democratic system in which all elections are contested, the Forward Party is willing to support its resources, willing to put its hat in the ring, even if they know that a lot of these races won't turn out well. It's, again, back to that principle of being pro-democracy. And so even in my district, and I met with him, he's a Forward endorsed candidate, actually one of our newest 6 Young Forwardist endorsed candidates. His name is Cameron Troy, running for the Pennsylvania State Senate District 33, which happens to be my district, lucky enough. I had the pleasure of meeting him in person the other day, and he's a school teacher in Waynesboro, which is a town just over the mountains that way. And he teaches civics in his classroom. He's a social studies teacher for 9th graders. And what he teaches, he's actually living out by challenging a very kind of staunchly MAGA opponent who is just plagued the district with MAGA partisanship. And he was associated with January 6th, Schroy's opponent. And he's been known for spreading hate across the country and across the state of Pennsylvania, even funding other races. Instead of doing his duty, he was out with his friends across the state funding their unsuccessful races. He ran for governor and not kind of putting the time and effort that's necessary to supporting his county as a state senator. And so really why the Young Forwardists and why the Forward Party loves candidates like Cameron Troy is that they're able to challenge them just for the principle of it. To say, hey, look, we're going to challenge you because you can't get away with things like this, not in this district, not in the United States, but rather by upholding the ideas of democracy and of the idea that contested races are most democratic, that we're holding these people accountable. And that's really what matters in circumstances like this, where we're in such a politically fractured environment.
Well, I majored in political science, and I had a professor tell me, well, you in politics, you don't need to be too highbrow or too lowbrow, which was great advice. But as you say, you've got to challenge the system and the status quo, and there's got to be some sort of accountability. And I feel like now, are people in Congress acting in the best interest of the citizens they serve? Or are they acting in the best interest of the party they serve?
Yeah.
And that's, it should be people over politics to me, but I'm just a naive guy, I guess, in some ways. But if you speak directly to the people here in Augusta, 200,000 people, I'm like, I think that the electorate's smarter than people give them credit for. And I think if you're only given junk food, you're going to feel bad. You're going to get unhealthy. But if somebody's offered a healthy alternative and they start going, man, I feel better, but they have to have that healthy alternative. And to me, I think Ford is the healthy alternative.
Yeah. No, I remember talking about that with you. We mentioned like broccoli in some way.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I might have hated if my parents were to give me like broccoli instead of a lollipop, but now I think I appreciated that they made choices to do something more similar to that, because it really enforces good behavior. And so when we have elected representatives held accountable for their actions, and then also in a system interacting with people on a grassroots level where they're forced to make human to human encounters and have that experience backing their mindset, then it's not just that we're giving them an alternative. It's that now they have a taste and now they have a sense to actually go pick the broccoli over the lollipop, or to do it for the right reason, do it for the health benefit, or in this case, do it for the people that they represent.
Well, so I had a situation when I was running in 2010. It was when, the first round of stimulus funding before we got into the latest mess. But so we got funding from the federal government to do help with the mixed income development in the midst of a golf course community. Well, anybody hears mixed income, oh, you're putting Section 8 housing. But so I went out to speak to the neighborhood association, right? So it's a raucous crowd. And so I'm like, man, I feel like I'm at one of those healthcare reform meetings. And
Yeah.
so everybody just started screaming and yelling. I said, or on the Jerry Springer show. So that was what they ran on the 11 o'clock news, was me saying to this neighborhood association, I feel like I'm on the Jerry Springer show. Well, our sheriff at the time, this was in South Augusta, great friend of mine, but he was from South Augusta. He's like, man, I think you're going to have a lot of problems out there. And I'm like, I'm at the grassroots level. I'm going to be okay. So I won with 64% of the vote. I'm like, that was just a vocal group of people. That did not represent the entire electorate. And I'll stand by what I say, because I'm like, you ask your kids to behave in school, and then you'll go attend a political rally and you'll act, like a child. I'm like, what message does that send to your kid?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it goes back to your point earlier of the loudest 3% dictating the entire conversation. And I mean, I'm a big fan of the show Parks and Recreation, if you've ever seen it. That's actually what inspired me to get involved in politics, local politics. So, I mean, there you go. I'm a product of Peacock Entertainment. But as the Young Forwardists, like, we're tired of seeing that same dichotomy, and we're not blind to it at all. Like, we can see if our parents, if the adults in our community are talking or treating us a certain way, and then they're going out and behaving the exact opposite. And so we believe that not only elected officials, but leaders in a community need to be upholding of the values that they expect us to represent. It's the exact way to say it is like, be the change you want to see. It should be that simple, especially in people like representatives, both on a local and a national level, who are routinely faced before the camera. Like, do you really want to act awry and all negative in front of us? Because then what do we grow up into?
Yeah, so no, and that's to me, and I was always so cognizant of that. I'm like, you've got to model the behavior you want to see in the next generation. So now, I mean, I spent so much time reading to kids in schools, and people say, why do you do that? Young people don't vote. I'm like, they need to know that they've got a mayor that cares about them and everything. Well, now those kids are 20 and 30 somethings that say, hey, do you remember when you came and read to my school? So it takes bigger picture thinking than just one election or just the next election. But that's why, I mean, for me to have the opportunity to foster your generation and work with you guys, I've been looking for an opportunity like this forever. And so this is divine intervention. So I just want to say thank you for, letting an old man be a part of your crew.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's truly our honor to have you and have you in support. The very first time I presented the Young Forwardists to the state leadership of the Forward Party, so a collection of state leads, I was asked a question like, what is the hardest thing to do as Young Forwardists? Like, what is the most difficulty that you've encountered? Part of it definitely is the idea of no, but the other part is that we just don't have that same sense of experience. I mean, you have an incoming student at UPenn, we've got a kid at Duke. Really, the only person with formal experience that we have in our group is somebody who's graduated a year ago and is preparing for law school. And they have a little bit of political experience, mostly in organizing, but everything that we know really is a product of what we've learned inside the Forward Party. I mean, I said I worked for the Forward Party for 2 years. And so the way that I came to know leadership, the way that I came to know how to run an organization like this as the president came from what I saw modeled within the party. And so we really lack leadership. But when I guess saviors to our organization like yourself, or conduits, come in across our path, we're really, really grateful, because that opens so much more opportunity and expertise running campaigns to help us reach more enthusiastic youth. So
well, man,
really the honor is ours.
I am totally psyched. I think there's an energy loop in life, and you usually, you put it out and you get it back. That's what I'm feeling like in our situation. You guys are energizing me, and I hope that energy loop is there, and I'm energizing you as well.
Yeah. No, and for the audience, I mean, you should have seen our reaction, the meeting that we had right after our first one with Deke. I think it was me and Solomon on that meeting, Deke. And Solomon afterwards just started like clapping. It's like, yes, finally, we're really getting somewhere. So, I mean, that's a shout out to him, but we really did feel that same energy.
Well, man, good deal. Well, as we get down towards the end, there are two questions I always like to ask people. So where can people find you?
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully you can just search up Young Forwardists and you'll see our website. But if that doesn't work, go to forwardparty.com/young_forwardists. And please sign up on our website. We have a lot of great opportunities we broadcast through there, whether it be meetings, whether it be volunteer work on political campaigns, working with your state party, working for us on a national level, doing things like social media or event hosting. We kind of have it all. If not, make sure to follow us on all of social media. Really, you can just pick a site and we'll have an account there. We are at Young Forwardists, and on X, because of the character limit, we are Young Forwardist. So make sure you look us up, follow us, and we'll be happy to get in touch.
All right, man. Well, my last question is, on a daily basis, what brings a smile to your face and puts joy in your heart?
I'll give you a couple of different answers. I'll keep it short, no worries. I'm a massive dogs fan. So anytime I walk downstairs, I see my two dogs or see a dog in public, that will bring a smile to my face. On the political realm, it's every single time I see somebody of my age show interest in politics that isn't just the same dichotomy that we've seen perpetuated by the two-party system. It's any time that they're looking to make a genuine connection instead of something that's just for networking, advertising, and whatnot. So really seeing the human in politics.
Well, man, we have two corgis, my wife and I do.
Ooh.
I'll shoot you some pics,
Yeah,
but
I was
they
gonna
are
say.
phenomenally hilarious. And one has his own Instagram too. It's at Olhoss, OLHOSS Enterprises. So he's got merch and stuff. He's kind of a celebrity. But man, I will tell you, Gabe, thank you for being a phenomenal guest. And I can't tell you, I'm like, when I cross paths with you guys, I'm like, here again, I've been looking for that situation where I can teach what we've learned here, that you can do it your way, the way that you guys are promoting it, and not just win an election 52-48. I mean, you can win big, but so I believe in you guys. I look forward to working with you. Thank you for being a phenomenal guest.
Thank you. And thank you for being a phenomenal host. We appreciate all of your support. And to the audience, if you want to find us, we will be on, ideally, every campus, whether it's high school or college at some point, as a Young Forwardist chapter in the future. So you better keep an eye out because we'll be around.
So if they want to get a chapter, they can reach out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can actually sign up on the website and we will be in contact and there will be opportunities to start a chapter. We will cover everything from funding to events to getting you a system, getting in contact with other people at your school, and then creating a full network of supporters in the area. So,
all righty, man. Well, that's all the time we've got. Dropping the mic, and we are out. Hey, guys, thanks for listening to or watching the Changemaker podcast today. Greatly appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to see the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deke Copenhaver. That's a pretty easy to remember, I would think. But really, we also want to remind you to like, subscribe, rate across all platforms, download. And if you're looking for a coach, a speaker, or anything, you know where to find me. Just email me at me@dekecopenhaver.com. And thanks so much for listening.